Mic's not on. Water's not here? Dude, I am not prepared at all. We're rocking a new setup, so see if that works. I don't know, man. Me. All right, really quickly before we dive into the video, I wanted to let you know that I'm going to MagicCon. Yes, I am incredibly excited. My best friend Can and I are going. Cannon's Collectibles, if you don't follow him, I'll put him somewhere up on the screen. It's over here now, because my screen's over here, but I'll put him somewhere over here. Check out his channel. He makes some dope stuff. At the time you're watching this video, we actually should have, I think we should have a collaborative episode up regarding Secrets of Strixhaven, doing a little bit of set review, just talking about the set in general, so go check that out if you haven't. It should be on the channel. Super stoked to be going to MagicCon, so if you see me there, walking around with the camera, I know obviously I have 6 subscribers, but if you see a dude with a camera who looks like me, go ahead and walk up, say what's up, maybe we can jam some Commander games, whatever. First MagicCon of hopefully not the last one, and I'm just very excited. All right, let's get into the video. Hello everyone, welcome back to Untapped with Andy. I'm Andy. This is episode 2. Very excited to bring you all another episode of Commander and Magic related content. Today we're going to be discussing, let's say, mistakes, misplays, tips and tricks, lessons that I've learned over my 2 years of playing Magic the Gathering the hard way so that you don't have to. You can learn from my mistakes, learn from these tips and tricks that I've gathered over the last couple of years, and hopefully improve your gameplay from doing so. I have my notes written down here. This may be a bit more of a lengthy episode because I do have things that I think are important, not only for new players, but experienced players as well. And on that note, I did want to say, this episode, before people come at me in the comments, because the last video, and I'm incredibly appreciative of it, because I had a lot of comments and way more views than I'd expected in my first video, so truthfully, thank you all from the bottom of my heart. That discourse, that engaging with one another, that is what I set out for with this channel, not mainly, but certainly as a sub-goal, secondary is a word? Anyway, before I get into the individual discussion points that I wanted to talk about today, you may find that these examples are more geared toward newer or beginner Magic players, specifically newer or beginner Commander players, and that may very well be the case because in the grand scheme of things, I've only been playing for 2 years and only been getting good at the game for the last year or so. So I would consider myself a relatively newer player. However, I do think that the topics that I'm going to be discussing today are also helpful, friendly reminders for intermediate players and potentially even advanced players, people who've been playing for a long time, because we all make misplays, we all make mistakes, we all miss triggers, we all fuck stuff up every now and again. It is what it is. We're gonna make mistakes. We have fun playing the game. Sometimes we get sidetracked and we misplay, and that is what it is. So even if you're not a freshly new player, I hope you stick around because I do think these tips are incredibly helpful for everyone. With that being said, let's go ahead and start with one that a lot of people are gonna think, yeah, duh, of course. It's gonna sound very obvious. But the first one I wanted to talk about is why fetch lands, such as your Flooded Strand, your Verdant Catacombs, things like that, why fetch lands are good. When I very, very first began playing Commander, I thought, why would I put a fetch land in my deck where I could just put another basic or another land that I want to play? Because the fetch land doesn't tap for mana, it just finds me lands that do tap for mana. So why would I not? That is understandable to a new player. Let me explain to you exactly why that is a train of thought that should be avoided at all costs. Fetch lands are going to fix your mana. Now what I mean by this is, it will find you the exact land that you want in that moment as opposed to just drawing a forest when you need a plains. So let's say it's turn 3 or turn 4, and everyone's boards are starting to set up a little bit more so than the last couple of turns, and you're in a good enough position to go ahead and cast a spell, play a land, and pass. So let's say you are in blue-white colors. Your land for turn is a Flooded Strand. You've already played your spell, you don't have a 1-mana spell to play, so you just pass the turn. There are 3 more people to take a turn before it gets back to you. In this instance, let's say you played a Plains instead, and someone casts something, and you have a 1-mana interaction spell in your hand, whether it be Into the Floodmaw, some other bounce spell, an offer you can't refuse, etc., etc. You have some way to interact with the board if you had blue mana as opposed to white mana. Plains hits the battlefield, you can interact. That thing stays, and now you have to wait for someone to have targeted removal. However, if you would have played that Flooded Strand, you could have fetched in response to someone casting that spell, found your blue mana, whether it be just a plain old basic island or some other untapped blue mana source, like a shock land, which I guess in this case would be a hallowed fountain. I was blanking that for some reason. So you find your island, you find your hallowed fountain, you find your untapped blue source, and you say, I have a response to that spell. Or, let's say another example. None of that happens. The player before you, still in their end step, you could then fetch before it gets to your turn, and you could find, if you're in 3 colors, you could find your Triome, you could find a Surveil land to look at an extra card and maybe get that card on the top of your deck so you can draw something better if you don't need whatever that top card is in that moment. Or you could just get a land that would otherwise guaranteed come in tapped. There are so many reasons why you could and should be running fetch lands if budgetary constraints are not part of the scenario. Now, if they are, obviously I understand. However, if you're running green and or white in any of your decks, Windswept Heath is like a $10 fetch land. So it's one more piece to better fix your mana that I would still consider relatively budget. Now, the last 2 things, these may not be as important as the previous reason why I think fetch lands are good and why you should think that as well. They give you a free shuffle. So that sounds strange, but in my opinion, I think to an extent, there's gonna be a ceiling on this, right? To an extent, the more you can shuffle your deck, the more you can rearrange the order of your cards. I think that's better. I think it consistently gives you an attempt to avoid a land pocket or drawing something you necessarily don't want to draw. So that free shuffle I think is always helpful. At the cost of 1 life and a potential tap land, that's okay. Or, you know, an untapped land if you search for a shotgun. Anyway, we're gonna talk about that. The final thing is extra landfall triggers. Now, of course, this is very specific to your deck, but a lot of green decks run a Tireless Provisioner because it ramps you. So you play your Flooded Strand, that gets you a treasure. You fetch, your other land comes in, that gets you a treasure. You just played a land and got 2 mana. Fetch lands are good, everyone knows this. Some people may not, some people may be not so about them or whatever. Telling everyone right now, objectively, they are good. If you do not have any specific budgetary constraints, of course, I would recommend running fetch lands in your deck when possible. So that was kind of 2 in 1 because my next sort of tip or trick is to fetch lands in response to a specific trigger or someone else's game action. The counter magic example is probably my favorite example because I don't think holding up mana is necessarily a good thing, and we're gonna get to that later. But if you have mana that you could not have otherwise spent, having that fetch land up to fetch in response to someone, whether you're just getting, you know, another landfall trigger, or if you're getting a removal spell, or if you're getting counter magic, whatever it is, fetching in response to someone casting something or doing something is always going to be better than fetching in a main phase or at sorcery speed, unless you are fetching to go get the land you need right then because you have something to cast. This one is simple but effective. I've learned over time that you don't always need to shock in your shock lands or your bolt lands, you know, the MDFCs that are pay 3 life to enter untapped to the other side. It's tempting to say, oh, I don't want to play another tap land. I would recommend like going a little bit slower whenever you see that land in your hand. You haven't played your land for turn. Look at your mana base, look at what's on your board, and really determine if you need to lose that 2 or 3 life right now. In Casual Commander, 2 or 3 life could mean the difference of you living 1 more turn to get 1 more chance to win the game, or just getting blown out by someone having a lightning bolt in hand and saying, oh, I can just kill this person right now. I've seen that happen, it's happened to me, so just really focus on whether or not you want that land to come in untapped. If you don't need the mana, don't use the 2 life. Don't use the 3 life. Play your land for turn and pass. It's a wasted 2 to 3 life if you shock that in and you don't have any counter magic, you don't have responses to things, you don't have interaction in your hand, and you don't use that land the turn that you shocked it in. I think this is something that doesn't really get talked about a lot, or maybe it does and I just don't hear about it, but I definitely would recommend looking at your board state and really determining if you need that mana to be untapped right now, or if you can wait until your next turn, have it come in tapped and say, oh, I'm gonna hold on to that 2 or 3 life because it may very well mean the difference between you winning or losing the game. So just a few minutes ago, I made a comment about holding up mana. I don't know if this is gonna be a hot take, because the last time I said something was a hot take, people either said they were incredibly cold or steaming hot and told me in the comments why, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know. You decide, let me know in the comments. Holding up mana is bad. I think that if you have spells to play, and you say, oh, I know he's gonna pop off next turn, or I know she's gonna cast something really big and scary next turn, I better hold up 2 blue mana. Don't do that. If you can advance your board state, if you can cast spells, if you can do something to better your game plan or your gameplay in that moment, rather than specifically hold yourself back just to say I'm gonna hold up 2 blue mana just in case, I would recommend doing that 10 times out of 10. Being able to say, yes, I can interact with someone is a good thing. You know, if you have the ability, not only within the colors of your deck, how your deck wants to run, and then also with the mana that you have available to you as you pass the turn, if you have the option to say, yes, I can interact with someone, I think that's good. If you're doing it at the cost of advancing your own board state, I think that's bad. Holding up mana just to say, I'm gonna counter that, don't play the police. Unless your deck specifically says, you need to be countering, like, the only one that comes to mind is like a Lord of the Nazgul, because that just screams control deck. So unless you're specifically playing a control deck, and even then, you're still gonna wanna advance your board state because there are permanents within control decks that need to be played to further synergize and advance your board. So unless you're specifically trying to control the table, don't hold up mana. Ultimately, unless you're running a deck like that Lord of the Nazgul that I was just talking about, or like the Dimir Alayla fairy deck, or Ishtola, you know, I know it's a very interactive, very responsive deck, and oftentimes decks like that do want you to be, you know, running interaction at instant speed, holding mana up if it's 1 to 2 to 3 blue or whatever it is, in between each turn or per turn cycle. That I understand. But more often than not, if you're not playing those decks, it's almost always going to be better for you to advance your own board state. And if someone gets, you know, a Crater Hoof off, or a Moonshaker Cavalry, or a big spell, or a scary spell, or a board wipe, or whatever it is, and you can't counter it, and you look at it and say, oh, if I wouldn't have played my card, I would have been able to counter it. What you're saying there is if I didn't play the game, I would have been able to stop them from playing the game? I don't know that I like that. Actually, I do know. I don't like that at all. If that's what happens, you shake their hand, you say good game, you shuffle up, and you run it back. That's how I'd rather play, and I think if you're finding yourself holding up mana frequently throughout turns, throughout games, over time, you're gonna have more fun playing more Magic. And the only way to do that is to spend the mana that you have when you have it. This one is something that I've been looking at a lot more recently, and looking at a lot more closely more recently, and I'm gonna look at my phone because I have a very specific example that I wrote out that I think is pertinent for everyone to consider. Other than going last sucks, like the actual 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4 seats, the order in which those seats take their turns matters a ton. It matters so much, and it can change a lot of things for the game. So let me give you an example. So your second 7, you know, everyone gets a free mulligan. In my pod, we're not really that strict on it, as long as you're not just fishing for your, you know, turn 1 Soul Ring, Arcane Signet into Esper Sentinel, whatever the hell you're trying to do. You can mulligan a couple times, and that's fine. No one's going for perfect 7. Anyway, so your second 7, after you mulligan once, contains 2 lands, one of which is an exotic orchard, but it also contains a mana rock and a turn 1 play. Let's say Llanowar Elves, classic turn 1 green play. Now, with this second 7, let's say that you're going first. This exotic orchard in your hand is now marginally worse because maybe that other land is a basic that allows you to cast at least your Soul Ring, but that exotic orchard does not see anything that's being played. So yeah, you can go ahead and play your basic, but being in first seat here, that exotic orchard is just marginally worse than it would have been if you would have played third, fourth, or even second, seeing another land come into play that you knew that your exotic orchard could tap for that land's mana. And one more thing to consider that is not nearly as likely, but is a possibility, the 3 other players at the table could just play an Evolving Wilds and pass, and then wait for your end step to crack it, or whatever. I don't think that's a good idea, but they could do that. So your exotic orchard could just be a dead land, or it's a colorless land, or no, in that example, it wouldn't even be colorless. It doesn't do anything, it'd be a dead land, which would suck. So turn order matters a ton. So whenever you're rolling to see whoever goes first, or however your pod decides it, really focus on what your first 7, your second 7, your opening hand looks like based on turn order, because you may want to mulligan again and say, oh, in seat 3, this hand is so much worse. Now that I'm going third, I might pitch this and go to 6. This also affects how you talk to players, specifically if you're going last, because going last does set you back so much more than going third or second. Obviously, going first is going to be better almost all the time, but going last is conversely almost all the time going to be the worst seat in which to be, because this does affect how you talk to the other players, which is a phenomenal segue into my next topic, which is use your words. Now, I don't mean this specifically and exclusively to politicking or doing any sort of political move with other players or the entire board. That is a main focal point of being able to use your words at the table and say, hey, if you do that, I'm gonna have to do this, or if you can hold off for 1 more turn, or if you can let me draw a card, whatever the politicking is, that is going to be an effective way to play Commander. Some people don't like it. I like it a lot because it is an unofficial sort of ruling of the game to say, hey, I know that you need to get rid of this thing on my board. If you give me one more turn with it, I can actually use it to kill them, or I can use it to deal with that problem on the board. You let me do my thing one more turn, give me a turn of immunity, whatever it is, and I can deal with that problem. And in that regard, you can look at another player who has interaction and or removal in their hand and wants to point it at you. You can say, hey, I get it. I'm kind of a problem, but that's about to go off and we need to deal with it before you blow up my stuff. And in doing so, you're now getting rid of two problem pieces. Yes, you're a little bit of a casualty, but you also take that target off of your head and point that laser towards someone else where you could maybe get a chance to rebuild if this specific disruption is going to worsen their board state significantly more than it would worsen yours. Two quick examples that I have written down because I'm just a forgetful dude regarding politics. So the first one is that you need to get one specific thing off the board. The only way you can do that is maybe with a niche board wipe or otherwise mass disruption. You know it's gonna hurt the whole table, so you can tell them, hey, I can help us. The only problem is, it's gonna hurt everyone. It's gonna hurt the threat at the table way more than the rest of us, but it will set us back a little bit. That's what I have to do. I just wanna be able to tell the board that, do with that information what you will, what do we think, so on and so forth. And this is what I like about using your words in Commander. At that point, maybe someone could say, okay, you know what? No, I actually do have removal in my hand. I was saving it for something else, but if your removal is gonna blow up my stuff too, I don't want that. I can use my targeted disruption piece on that player so we don't all lose our stuff. Hang on to that board wipe, hang on to that whatever that you have until such a time where we really think we need it. Another one, and this is for like bracket 3 or higher power play, let's just go ahead and say that you cast a tutor spell, like a vampiric tutor, you cast a worldly tutor, an enlightened tutor, whatever it is, on someone's end step, you cast something and they say, hey, whoa, what are we doing here? They may have interaction to stop your tutor. Pause really quickly. If you can, counter the thing for which players are tutoring, don't counter the tutor. If you can, that's all I'm gonna say. So you cast a worldly tutor. And initially you were thinking, oh, I need to go get a creature that's gonna heavily advance my board state. Not just mana, not just card draw, not like a value creature, like I'm getting something to either push for a win or get me a lot closer. And someone shows you that they have interaction. They say, hey, I don't know, I feel like you're going for a win here. Tell me why I shouldn't counter this. At that point you can say, okay, I don't think you should counter this. I can put myself in a position where I go get, you know, a mana dork, or I go get something that can still advance my board state, doesn't fully set me back as a wasted tutor, but also I can tell you I'm not gonna push for a win here. This other player is more threatening now, or whatever the case may be. At that point you can say, hey, let me get my tutor off, save your interaction for something bigger, something scarier, and hopefully that is a good way to kind of make a deal, or that's a good way to, what word am I looking for? Cooperate? Collaborate? Make a compromise. It's a C word, that's what okay. Hopefully that's a way that you and that player or another player or players have interaction, can compromise and say, all right, your tutor's fine, do your thing, and then you can untap and proceed advancing your board state as you had planned to, just in a little bit of a different fashion than you originally had intended. A couple more sub-points regarding using your words in a game of Commander, and then we'll get on to the last topic that I wanted to touch on today. One thing that I found myself doing, and it's just because I'm very much an applied learner. I'm not a visual learner. I don't retain things just by seeing them. So what I found myself doing is just literally saying out loud actions that other people have taken since it was last my turn. So as I pass my turn and someone says, okay, I'm gonna play a land, tap this, cast this spell, I'm gonna go look for XYZ, whatever they're doing, by the time it gets back to me, before I untap, I might even just say out loud, okay, John, he had cast a tutor. John tutored this turn, which probably means he looked for a combo piece, or he looked for something to severely advance his board state. Maybe he tutored for interaction. Whatever the case is, I find myself saying these things out loud, and it's actually been like a really helpful reminder, not only to myself, but it also helps the table. Players can get so focused on what they're doing, trying to advance their board state, or they get so focused on someone who's very clearly the threat at the table, but they can't do anything about it, and so they kind of just get this tunnel vision where everything outside that is just not happening to them in that moment. And by the time they can catch back up and realize, oh wait, I forgot that John tutored, maybe the sheer fact that they didn't make a mental note or even a verbal note of what had taken place since it was last their turn, that could set them back. I found that it sets me back on occasion, and I found that regularly saying these things out loud to myself and to my friends, to someone who is the threat at the table, whoever it is, it's really helpful. Now the last thing about using your words, and I might get some flack for this, or maybe I won't, I don't know. Maybe some people will support this, I hope that you will. Someone put something stinky and scary on the stack, and everyone agrees that it sucks. Everyone agrees that this person, if this resolves, will now clearly be the threat. Sorry, I'm shaking my computer because my screens are going blank. I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but it's annoying. Someone put something on the stack that is disgusting, and you agree that if it resolves, it's going to suck. But you know in your head that it's gonna suck a lot more for the other two players than it will for you. If someone casts something, someone puts something on their board and it is bad, but it does not negatively affect your board the way that it does the other two players, let them deal with it. Don't telegraph that you have interaction. Don't immediately blow your reaction to say, oh, I know that's bad and everyone hates it, so I just need to get rid of it. You can talk out loud and say, hey, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm actually good with this. This is fine, I'm passing. This is fine with me. And that either will let the other players know that, oh, this doesn't affect you, or maybe they think you have interaction or whatever it is. You don't have to tell anyone shit, and you don't have to do anything. Just because you have a response doesn't mean you need to blow interaction right then and right there. Let that person's smothering tithe resolve. You know you're only gonna be drawn one card on your turn before you can deal with it, and maybe you can even pay. Or maybe you don't know if you can have removal for it in the next 2 to 3 turns, but maybe you know that you can 100% pay for the tithe and hopefully not allow them to speed up while other players are fighting over it, and it allows you to build up your board while you're not the threat. There's no target on you. Those two other players are looking at the smothering tithe player, and you're just kind of quietly sitting back, putting together your puzzle pieces, and then when you can finally blow up the smothering tithe and present a win. It's funny that we're talking about this in a use your words sort of section here, but you also don't have to. You don't have to tell anyone anything. You don't have to interact, you don't have to respond. Just because you have an interaction doesn't mean to blow it on that one player. Talk to the table. Let them know, hey, I gotta be honest, this does not hurt me the way that it hurts you all. I understand it puts them in a better position, but at least in your perspective, it doesn't put them in the commanding lead in which it seems to put them based on the other two players' perspectives. And finally, I'm always going to recommend this regarding talking to players at the table. I don't care if this is your first Commander game. I don't care if it is your 101st Commander game. I don't care if you've been playing for 10 years or 10 fucking seconds. Ask more questions. I'm always going to recommend that new, intermediate, advanced, whatever. Every player should be asking questions because it keeps people talking, it keeps people engaged. Maybe one of these questions is, hey, what was that card he played? I'm sorry, I just forgot. I know he cast some sort of instant speed spell on your end step. That allows people to be reminded of those game actions, kind of a callback to what I was talking about earlier, just taking those out loud verbal notes, and then you're able to sort of reignite the table and say, oh wait, yeah, John did vamp tutor on Jane's end step. Or just ask questions about someone's board state. Don't be nervous. You're playing with new people, either you're playing with your buddies. An example that I think of a lot is me and my pod, my current pod. We play on Spell Table a lot because a lot of us are either out of state or we're 30, 40 minutes away. We don't have time in the evenings and the weeknights to drive to a local shop, meet up. Okay, camera shut off there. That was weird. Don't really remember exactly what I said when I had stopped off, but basically what I was saying is that with my current pod, we don't have a whole lot of time to meet up in person and play, so we frequently play on Spell Table. So being able to look at someone's board and say, hey, I can't see that card, or like, hey, I know you just played that, sorry, would you remind me what that is? Again, reminding the table, reminding yourself, just making those verbal notes. I'm always gonna recommend talking more, asking more questions throughout a Commander game. I don't think it's gonna be a bad idea. I do think there's a ceiling to be asking these questions, meaning I do think there's a point where you should just be paying more attention to what's happening. Don't be the player who's on their phone and just waiting for your turn to come up. If you're gonna play a game, be engaged in the game. But if you're asking questions as a means to remind the table or to really understand the gravity of the game actions that people are taking, I think that's a completely different story, and I'm always going to be in support of it. For the last topic, this will be, well, I don't know. You guys have seen how I talk, so it may not be quick. I'm hoping that this will be a quick one. Threat assessment. Specifically bad threat assessment. Not being able to really decide who is the threat or who is the most threatening to you can often be the reason you're not winning Commander games, you're not having fun in Commander games, because you're wasting time, resources, actions, etc. on target removal or mass removal for this one player. You're so laser focused, and in reality, maybe this person really isn't the most threatening. Maybe there's someone who is secretly building while you're just countering everything that player 1 is playing, or blowing up everything that player 2 is putting on their board. And then in the meantime, player 3 is just ramping their ass off, getting a bunch of lands into play so they can cast their Crater Hoof and win, because you've been so laser focused on someone, when in reality there are either, bigger threats at the table, or there are multiple threats at the table. So whether there be multiple threats at the table, or whether it's, hey, this is not a threat to me right now, but it will be down the road. Don't just blow something up because someone else tells you it's threatening. If you can endure someone's stacks piece, or if you can, let someone get a treasure, or you have the mana to pay for someone's Rhystic Study, but someone else doesn't, don't just immediately blow it up. Focus on advancing your board until such a time where something is immediately threatening you and you have to deal with it right then because you can't deal with it any other time. Then let's talk to the whole table and say, hey, this person's the threat. Until we get to that point, I think you should be a little bit more open-minded with your threat assessment and really understanding what is the most threatening to you and your board in this moment, and do you need to deal with it? A lot of times, the answer is going to be no, at least not right now. And in that scenario, you can continue to advance your board and play more Magic. And you might even be able to play more Magic than your opponents. And that's how you win Commander games. That's gonna be the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please be sure to comment down below. What did you think of today's topics? Do you agree with them? Do you disagree with them? Why or why not? Whatever it is, please comment down below, because that engagement thrills me. No, I'm just kidding. That engagement is one of the reasons that I created the channel, because that is what I wanted to do with this channel. I wanted to be able to have conversations with people in this space, and I'm really passionate about Magic and content creation, so I figured, why the hell not? So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to like the video, drop a comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you have not yet, and I will see you guys in the next video, and maybe, just maybe, I'll see you at MagicCon. But if I don't see you at MagicCon, I will absolutely see you in the next video, or at least you'll see me. And that's what matters. Bye.